What happens when a national recession collides with fragile state economies? The results can be swift and devastating. Schools close, hospitals cut services, infrastructure breaks down, and populations begin to leave in large numbers. In America, not every state is equally prepared for a downturn. Some have strong reserves, diverse industries, and growing populations. Others stand on a shaky foundation, already stretched thin by debt, poverty, or dependence on a single sector. Today, we count down the 10 U.S. states most vulnerable if the economy crashes. Make sure to subscribe to Global Lens for more deep dives into the forces shaping nations, states, and communities. Chapter 1. Mississippi. Mississippi has long ranked at the bottom of most economic and social indicators in the United States. Median household income sits well below the national average, and nearly 1 in 4 residents lives in poverty. Only about half of working-age adults participate in the labor force, reflecting not just unemployment, but deep structural issues including early retirement, disability, and lack of opportunities. The state's economic history has been rooted in agriculture and low-wage manufacturing, both sectors weakened by globalization and automation. Since the 1990s, textile mills and factories closed as production shifted overseas. Recovery from the Great Recession was slow, leaving growth rates consistently near the bottom nationally. Infrastructure adds another layer of fragility. Bridges and highways are rated among the worst in the country, while rural hospitals continue to close, leaving entire counties without emergency medical access. Education outcomes rank last in the nation, and fewer than 1 in 4 adults hold a bachelor's degree. This makes it difficult to attract new industries requiring a skilled workforce. When federal funding for Medicaid or infrastructure declines, Mississippi's budgetary cushion is so thin that service cuts are almost immediate. In the event of a national downturn, this is a state where local economies could collapse within weeks, not years. Chapter 2. Louisiana. Louisiana dazzles visitors with culture, cuisine, and music, but beneath the surface, its economy is dangerously exposed. Nearly 1 in 5 residents live below the poverty line, and median household income lags far behind states on the coasts. The dependence on oil and gas has always been a double-edged sword. When energy prices are high, tax revenues rise. When prices fall, unemployment surges and state finances unravel. The oil bust of the 1980s permanently altered Louisiana's trajectory, and more recent collapses in 2014 and 2020 reinforced the risks. Geography compounds the fragility. Louisiana is one of the most disaster-prone states in America. Hurricanes Katrina, Laura, Ida, and Zeta inflicted billions in damages, eroded coastal defenses, and accelerated outmigration. At one point after Katrina, hundreds of thousands relocated to Houston and other parts of Texas. The state's rainy day fund is chronically underfunded, representing only a fraction of its annual budget. Infrastructure repair needs are immense, with billions required to keep roads and bridges safe. Education ranks near the bottom, while nearly 40% of rural hospitals face the risk of closure. A national recession combined with another major storm could rapidly overwhelm Louisiana, reducing tax collections, shuttering services, and pushing more residents to leave behind a shrinking tax base. Chapter 3. Michigan. Michigan embodies both resilience and exhaustion. Once the symbol of American industrial power, the state has been battered by the long decline of the auto industry. While Detroit has seen new investments downtown, much of the state remains in distress. In 2024, nearly 40% of Michigan households reported financial stress, the highest rate in the nation. This includes overdue bills, bankruptcies, and housing insecurity. Manufacturing still accounts for almost 1/5 of state GDP, far above the national average. When auto sales decline or plants close, entire communities lose their economic engine. Infrastructure problems are glaring. Roads are notoriously poor, with slogans like "Fix the damn roads" turning into political campaigns. The Flint water crisis revealed deep institutional failures, and even today, some communities remain under boil water advisories. Population decline has drained the tax base. Since the 1970s peak, Michigan has lost hundreds of thousands of residents. Detroit alone has more vacant land than Manhattan, with entire neighborhoods abandoned. While a handful of cities are reviving, others remain trapped in cycles of poverty, crime, and disinvestment. If another deep recession arrives, Michigan will be hit twice. First through auto sector layoffs, and second through a shrinking tax base unable to fund infrastructure, education, and healthcare. Chapter 4. Texas. Texas projects. Strength with its booming metro areas, job growth, and status as the ninth largest economy in the world. But the prosperity masks deep vulnerabilities. While Austin, Dallas, and Houston attract tech companies and newcomers, rural Texas is losing population, closing schools, and watching hospitals disappear. More than a third of Texans were reported in financial distress in 2024, the second highest rate nationally. Housing costs have surged, with Austin's median home price skyrocketing during the pandemic housing boom. For many longtime residents, wages have not kept pace, forcing families into debt or multiple jobs. Energy dominance is also a risk. Texas produces nearly half of U.S. crude oil and over a quarter of its natural gas. But oil prices swing wildly. The state's economy slumps when energy markets collapse, as seen in 2014 and 2020. Infrastructure is another weak spot. The 2021 winter freeze caused widespread power grid failure, leaving millions without heat or water and exposing systemic fragility. Texas also has the nation's highest uninsured rate, leaving millions vulnerable during downturns. Without health coverage or reserves, job losses quickly cascade into bankruptcies. While the state as a whole will not collapse overnight, the divide between booming urban cores and struggling rural regions means Texas is far less resilient than its growth numbers suggest. Chapter 5. Illinois. Illinois is home to Chicago's skyline, major universities, and transport hubs. Yet beneath the prestige lies one of the weakest fiscal foundations in America. The state has the worst-funded pension system nationwide, with unfunded liabilities of around $140 to $150 billion. The funding ratio is below 45%, meaning less than half the money needed is available to pay retirees. Illinois also has one of the smallest rainy day funds, only able to keep government running for about 2 weeks without revenue. Property taxes are among the highest in the country, driving middle-class families to relocate. Illinois has recorded population decline for 10 consecutive years, losing more than 100,000 residents in 2023 alone. Each departure shrinks the tax base further, creating a vicious cycle. Infrastructure is deteriorating, with 1 in 5 roads rated poor and thousands of bridges in unsafe condition. Chicago itself faces rising crime, debt, and underfunded public services. Major companies have relocated their headquarters elsewhere, citing costs and instability. A national downturn would leave Illinois scrambling with little cushion, forcing service cuts, tax hikes, and more outmigration. Without reform, the collapse would not be sudden but a prolonged fiscal spiral. Chapter 6. Hawaii. Paradise comes with a steep price. Hawaii's cost of living is the highest in the United States, with prices nearly double the national average. Housing is especially difficult, with median home prices approaching $850,000. The state is uniquely dependent on tourism, which represents over 1/5 of its economy. When global travel halts, as during the 2020 pandemic, unemployment spikes dramatically. In April 2020, Hawaii's unemployment rate soared to nearly 22%, the worst in the nation. Geographic isolation magnifies vulnerability. Disasters like the 2023 Maui wildfires not only destroy local communities, but also ripple through the entire tourism sector as visitors cancel trips. Recovery is costly, and the state relies heavily on imports for food and energy, raising the risk of disruption during shipping delays or global instability. Population loss is another challenge. Tens of thousands of residents, including many native Hawaiians, have left in recent years for the U.S. mainland, seeking affordable housing and better opportunities. This outflow reduces the workforce and erodes community ties. If another recession coincides with a tourism slump or natural disaster, Hawaii's fragile system could falter rapidly, leaving residents with limited options. Chapter 7. Kentucky. Kentucky is celebrated for bourbon, horse racing, and scenic landscapes, but its economy is among the most distressed in the country. Median household income is far below the national average, and poverty exceeds 20% in many areas. The decline of coal mining has devastated eastern Kentucky. Automation, cheap natural gas, and the global energy shift reduced coal jobs by more than 70% between 2008 and 2023. Once thriving towns now face shuttered businesses and population loss. Manufacturing, particularly auto production, remains a pillar, but it is highly vulnerable to global supply chain shocks. Plant closures ripple through entire local economies. Healthcare is another crisis. Over 40% of rural hospitals are at risk of closure, leaving residents with long drives for emergency care. The opioid epidemic has been particularly severe, with overdose deaths among the highest nationally. Kentucky is also one of the most federally dependent states, with nearly 40% of its budget funded by Washington. Cuts to Medicaid or infrastructure spending would immediately destabilize state services. Education attainment is low, reducing competitiveness for new industries. In a national downturn, Kentucky lacks both reserves and diversification, making it highly vulnerable to cascading decline. Chapter 8. Nevada. Nevada thrives on entertainment, tourism, and gaming. Las Vegas and Reno provide more than a quarter of all jobs in hospitality and leisure. This model works in good times but collapses instantly in recessions. During the Great Recession, Nevada experienced the highest foreclosure rates in the country, with entire subdivisions left vacant. Unemployment peaked at nearly 14%, and recovery stretched for years. In 2020, the pandemic shutdown sent unemployment to 30%, the highest in modern U.S. history. The tax structure amplifies vulnerability. Nevada has no income tax and relies heavily on sales and gaming revenue, which disappeared during downturns. In 2023, more than 70% of the state's general fund revenue depended on consumer spending. That leaves little buffer for schools, healthcare, or infrastructure when visitors stop spending. Because of this narrow fiscal base, Nevada has one of the lowest per capita state budgets. When the economy slows, the government cannot easily cushion the blow. Rural regions, already distant from the tourism hubs, feel the effects most severely. A new recession would not just reduce revenues, but also deepen inequality between Las Vegas and the rest of the state. Chapter 9. Alabama. Alabama's cultural history is rich, but its economy faces structural weaknesses. Poverty hovers near 16%, with child poverty rates much higher in rural counties. Median household income is among the lowest in the nation, leaving families with little savings. Healthcare is a major stress point. Alabama has the third highest uninsured rate in the country, and since 2010, more than a dozen rural hospitals have closed. Residents in some regions drive over an hour for basic emergency care. Infrastructure is also in poor condition, with nearly half of rural roads and hundreds of bridges rated deficient. Broadband access lags behind, limiting modern economic opportunities. The economy leans on manufacturing, agriculture, and aerospace. While Huntsville has attracted defense and tech projects, large areas remain dependent on low-wage, labor-intensive jobs that vanish quickly during downturns. Federal dependence is high, with more than 40% of the budget funded by Washington. Any cuts or delays to federal spending directly threaten public services. In a national downturn, Alabama would see rapid job losses, hospital closures, and reduced infrastructure investment, pushing already fragile communities into deeper decline. Chapter 10. West Virginia. West Virginia, with its rolling mountains and rivers, is also the most vulnerable state in America if the economy crashes. The workforce participation rate is the lowest in the country, under 45%. Fewer than 1 in 4 adults hold a bachelor's degree, limiting opportunities for high-paying industries. The collapse of coal mining is at the heart of the state's decline. Between 2012 and 2023, coal production fell by more than half, leaving towns once built on mining in long-term distress. The opioid epidemic has devastated communities, producing one of the highest overdose death rates in the nation. Hospitals, especially in rural counties, struggle to stay open. Public health outcomes are among the worst nationwide, with high rates of chronic illness and poverty. Population loss has persisted for more than a decade, reducing tax revenues and leaving behind shrinking towns and empty schools. Nearly 1/3 of the state's budget comes from federal aid. Without that support, West Virginia could not fund essential services. In the event of a national recession or federal spending cuts, West Virginia faces the prospect of true economic collapse, with counties turning into ghost towns and little prospect of near-term recovery. Economic downturns strike unevenly across the United States. States with diverse industries, healthy reserves, and strong education systems are more resilient. Those with concentrated economies, shrinking populations, underfunded infrastructure, and high poverty are far more exposed. The 10 states we've examined, Mississippi, Louisiana, Michigan, Texas, Illinois, Hawaii, Kentucky, Nevada, Alabama, and West Virginia, stand on fragile ground. Each carries risks unique to its history and structure, from energy dependence to pension crises to tourism reliance. While resilience exists in every state, the reality is clear. If the U.S. economy crashes, these states will face the hardest path forward. Thank you for watching Global Lens. If you found this analysis insightful, subscribe for more in-depth explorations of the world's economies, societies, and challenges. Until next time, stay informed and stay prepared.